Welcome back everyone, it's Eric from Rare Candy, and here today we are back with our very first Vivid Voltage deck profile, and today we're going to be covering the new Orbeetle VMAX from the new set. Definitely one of my personal favorite new cards that's coming out. I think this card has a lot of potential, and there's actually a bunch of different ways I've been experimenting with Orbeetle. And actually too, if you want some more Orbeetle content, if you are a fan of the card, I dropped an exclusive article for our Stage 2 patrons over at patreon.com/rarecandy detailing some additional ways to build Orbeetle, and it's a whole write-up featuring tech cards and all that sort of good stuff as well. So if you guys want some more Orbeetle content, I'll have a link down below in the description to that. And if you want to see this deck in action, we will have a live match being posted in the next day or so. And whenever that's live, I will have a link down below in the description to that as well. But getting back to the actual deck at hand here today, like I said, this is going to be Orbeetle, and let's see how this one is going to look. So up first, we have 4 copies of Jirachi, of course, for the Stellar Wish ability. This deck, as you'll see, plays a ton of switching cards. And Jirachi, I think, naturally kind of has synergy. We have things like Bird Keeper, Scoop Up Net, etc. And Jirachi just kind of pairs nicely with a deck that does run all of these different scoop up options. But up next from there, we do have 4 copies of Orbeetle VMAX, or not the VMAX, but Orbeetle V, of course, before we evolve into the VMAX. And Orbeetle actually does have a couple of half-decent attacks. His first attack, just for a grass energy, is 20, and you switch it with a Pokemon on your bench. So, Orbeetle VMAX does need 2 energy to get up and running. So you can attack with this, maybe switch into a Jirachi, try to protect your Orbeetle for another turn before you can evolve. And its other attack for a grass colorist is 50 plus 30 for each energy on your opponent's active. So it actually has better attacks than a lot of these basic Pokemon V that we sometimes see. But up next from there, of course, 4 copies of Orbeetle VMAX, the main attacker of the deck here. So Orbeetle VMAX, what makes this card so interesting is this ability on it. It says once during your turn, if this Pokemon is your active, you may put 1 damage counter on each of your opponent's Pokemon. And this does stack, so meaning if we have 2 or 3 of these things in play and we're switching around a bunch on a turn, we actually get in a ton of chip damage with this ability. And we've seen a lot of cards over the years have these sort of strong damage placing abilities, whether it's the Galarian Zigzagoon we have in format now, or even older cards like the Decidueye GX, Chandelure, Crobat G, etc. These styles of abilities have been pretty good in the past, and with the amount of different switching cards that we have right now, I actually do think you can abuse this ability pretty well. And its attack here, just for a grass colorist like its pre-evolution, does 50 plus 50 more for each energy on your opponent's active. So on average, if your opponent has 3 energy on them, you're going to be hitting for 200, which isn't a crazy amount of damage, but just for 2 energy, 200 is pretty good. Especially once we factor in the spreading that we have here with Orbeetle VMAX as well to sort of, compound our damage output a little bit more. And one thing I do like about this card too, it does have a 1 retreat cost, which you'll see in our trainers, means we can abuse U-turn board for this deck. So really like the stats on this thing. 310 HP is a little on the low side, and we do have fire weakness in this deck as well, but we do have some ways at sort of dealing with some of these, issues that the card inherently has. But more on that later. Next up, though, we have 1 copy of Buzzmosa in the deck as well. Buzzmosa, this is a card I've really been liking. So one issue I think Orbeetle has just as a deck is being able to, close out games. This deck doesn't really have a great way at just gusting up a Dedenne or a Crobat and just taking a 1-shot to end the game like a lot of decks do. So I really like Buzzmosa as a good finisher here. Of course, Buzzmosa has a couple of different good attacks. Jet Punch 30 and 30 on the bench, just a nice little softening attack. If we are unfortunate enough to start with this, Jet Punch actually can be kind of decent. Its next attack, Elegant Soul, for 2 grass and a colorless, does 190. And then next turn, I believe it does 60. So 190 is actually a pretty good number to hit for. We do have some ways at cheating energy into play in this list as well. So Elegant Soul maybe can be a decent move to close out a game, to knock out a Dedenne, Crobat, whatever it might be. But what I really like about this card is Beast Game GX. Of course, if we take a knockout with this attack, this 50 damage, we get an extra prize in the process. And this actually works out really well for a couple different things. Due to things like resistance, we're not going to be able to quite one-shot a Zacian V with Orbeetle, but Buzzmosa can sometimes come in, clean up a knockout on a Zacian, and get us an extra prize in the process. And just in general, we're going to be spreading a lot of damage counters throughout the game and softening things up with, kind of going for a 2-shot war here. Beast Game GX seems like a really, really solid sort of closing attack to maybe cheat your last prize for the game. Next up from there, we have one copy of Galarian Zigzagoon in the deck. So, of course, we are playing a Scoop Up Net engine with this deck. So, being able to abuse this ability by placing an extra damage counter really pairs nicely with the core sort of strategy of the deck here. And speaking of Scoop Up Net, we also have one copy of Mr. Mime for the Scoop Up Block ability. So the reason we're playing Mr. Mime in this deck is to actually deal with Eternatus. 310 HP is actually a little bit on the lower side and puts us within range of Eternatus being able to one-shot us with things like Zigzagoon, Scoop Up Nets, etc. And so if they are one-shotting us and we have to two-shot them, we're really not going to be in a good spot. So Mr. Mime is going to be able to make it so that Pokemon with damage counters on our opponent's field can't be picked up with, scoop up style cards like Scoop Up Net. So that means if we spread one to everything on Eternatus' field, they can't reuse their Zigzagoons, making it much more difficult for them to reach for a one-shot against us. So Mr. Mime, really for that Eternatus matchup in particular, but it can be good against really any deck that has a Scoop Up Net based engine. Up next from there, we have one copy of Tapu Koko Prism Star. So Koko Prism, this is a card I do like. One of the things I like about Orbeetle compared to some of the other 2 energy attacking VMAXs that we have, like Dragapult or Eternatus, is that they really can't, even though they have a 2 energy attack cost, they really can't cheat extra energy in play. In the case of Dragapult, it needs 2 psychic energy. In the case of something like Eternatus, you can't play non-dark Pokemon. But with the Orbeetle having part colorless attack cost, this means we actually can't abuse Koko Prism. So meaning if our only Orbeetle that's powered up gets knocked out and we need an attacker for the next turn, we can attach Grass Energy, use Dance of the Ancients to get a Lightning from discard pile to our VMAX and be able to start attacking in the same turn. So since we do have that flexible colorless energy, I have been liking Koko Prism in the current list. Next up, we have one copy of the Dedenne GX, of course for that Dedenne changeability, just to discard our hand and draw 6. And we have a copy of Crobat V as well. For similar reasons, we can draw up to 6 cards, just a couple of nice ability-based forms of draw in the deck. Going on from there, though, into our supporter cards, of course, 4 copies of Research, probably the best draw supporter we have right now in the game. Discard your hand, draw 7. But getting more interesting from there, we also have 3 copies of Bird Keeper in the deck. So, of course, we switch our active with one of our bench Pokemon, then draw 3 cards if we do. So this pairs really nicely. We want to be able to use 2, sometimes 3 abilities in a single turn with Orbeetle VMAX, and Bird Keeper is another card that will allow us to do so. So ideally, I think an average turn could look like you have a U-turn board on an Orbeetle VMAX, you play Bird Keeper, or you have a U-turn board, you manually retreat, play Bird Keeper, and switch to be able to use these abilities 3 times ideally. So this has synergy with Jirachi as well, so I just really like this whole engine that we have going here with the heavy switching cards. Next up from there, we have 3 copies of Boss's Orders in the deck as well, just to choose what we want to take knockouts on. And we also have 2 copies of Marnie to round out our draw supporter cards, just because we don't really have any hand disruption in this current list. I have no copies of Reset Stamp, so I did want a couple copies of Marnie instead of having like 4 copies of Bird Keeper, just as an example. I do think one of these is potentially up to be cut. One of the supporters in general, not necessarily Marnie, but right now we have 9 draw supporters. I think an average list is going to be playing somewhere around 7 to 8 if you're playing like a Jirachi-based engine with Crobats and Dedennes as well. So one of these could theoretically be cut, but for this initial list, I'm going all in on consistency as much as possible, at least. Up next from there, though, we have 2 copies of Turffield Stadium in the deck as well. So Turffield, I really like here. We need a counter stadium just in general for a lot of different decks out there. And this one will allow us to search your deck for a grass evolution. So, of course, we want to swarm these VMAXs into play as quick as possible. Turffield's going to be a great way at being able to do that. Next up, we have 4 copies of Quick Ball, just probably the best searching card that we have right now in the format. Discard a card from your hand, search your deck for a basic Pokemon. We also have 4 copies of Switch, as I kind of already mentioned here. Just switch our active. We want to be, moving a lot in a given turn, whether it's with Stellar Wish, using multiple abilities with Orbeetle VMAX. So definitely want to max out this card. And for similar reasons, we're also playing 4 copies of Scoop Up Net as well here. This is another card that will allow us to move around a little bit more, getting those Jirachis out of the active, reusing things like Galarian Zigzagoon, whatever it might be. Up next from there, we have 3 copies of Pokemon Communication in the deck as well. Just for, a little bit more Pokemon search, we want to get a bunch of Orbeetles and Orbeetle VMAXs into play. So we need a lot of ways at searching out Pokemon in the deck. So of course, Communication, we put a Pokemon back into our deck and get a different one. So even on turns where we have a Research in hand, we don't want to discard a VMAX, we can put it back, get something else in the meantime. Up next from there, we have our last switching cards. That's going to be U-Turn Board. So I really like U-Turn Board in this deck. The only thing it's not going to work on is Buzzmosa, but we have so many other switching cards, it's really not even a big deal. So of course, U-Turn Board. It's going to reduce our retreat cost by 1, but if this card gets discarded from play, it goes back into our hand instead of getting discarded. So I really do like that about this card. You could play Air Balloon just to be able to better use this with Buzzmosa, but like I said, I'm really not too stressed about it. I really like the utility of being able to get U-Turn Board back if we do need to. And then from there, to round out our trainer cards, we have one copy of Energy Spinner as well, just because we want a Stellar Wish target to be able to get energy. Just because Jirachi's going to be able to search out basically anything else. Of course, draw cards, gusting cards, Pokemon search cards, but Stellar Wish only hits trainer cards, so we need a way to find those. And we're not playing Viridian Forest, so we need to be able to play this instead. So of course, we search our deck for a basic energy, but if it's our first turn going second, we get 3. And that can sometimes be nice at searching out those lightning energies to discard with your supporter, quick ball, whatever it might be. And getting into our energy, we have 2, 4, 6 copies of Grass Energy in total. We really don't need too many in the list. You know, at max, I think we're probably going to be attacking with 3 Orbeetles in the course of a game at most, and maybe a Buzzmosa. So just in case we have to discard 1 or 2 or prize 1 or 2, we have a couple extras if need be. We also have 2 copies of Lightning Energy in the deck as well, just to be able to get those energies onto Orbeetle's a little bit easier with Coco as well. This also does give us an out to attacking with Tingly Return GX on the Dene, as funny as that is. So that's something we have to keep in mind as well. And then from there, we have 2 copies of Weakness Card Energy to round out our energy cards. So of course, Fire is still a prevalent type in the game right now. So Weakness Card Energy is going to help us a little bit in those matchups. Makes sure our Orbeetles can't get one-shot. Or at least as easily by things like Centiskorch, Blacephalon, etc. So that's going to be our initial draft here of Orbeetle VMAX. I have to say, guys, I've been having a lot of fun testing different variants with this card. Just the maneuverability you have and being able to switch around a lot on your board on a given turn is really fun. And getting those extra damage counters allows you to sometimes cheese extra KOs you normally wouldn't be able to. So Orbeetle, definitely a card I think has a lot of potential. And like I said to you guys, if you are excited about this card as well, be sure to check out our full article detailing 3 more Orbeetle VMAX lists for different directions I've been taking this card. That's going to wrap up this video today, guys. Hope you did enjoy. Of course, if you did, smack that like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you can, consider supporting this channel as well by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/rarecandytcg, or by picking up some merch from our online store at rarecandytcg.com. It would mean a lot. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.